My brother-in-law called me the one who got away in his speech and my husband is very hurt and it is my all fault. Update. Yesterday my husband and I were invited to my in-laws for a cookout. When we arrived Chris saw us and tried to scrape her. Well, nobody expected us to show up and my husband wanted to decline but I insisted we go. I caught Chris however and loudly said, "Oh, I'm happy you are here because I want to talk to you." I said that since the people in this cookout were all in the rehearsal dinner I wanted them to listen too. Chris looked like he was about to cry but my father-in-law was grabbing his arm when he tried to excuse himself. I told Chris that what he did was a shitty thing that didn't just hurt me but it hurt his brother even more and that the only reason I didn't speak up was because I was in shock but also I didn't want to ruin our day by arguing back and forth with an arrogant and selfish man who always hid behind alcohol to explain his bad behaviors like he's some tween. I told him that I never was the one that got away because he never had me. I never knew the real him and I liked his exterior like I was sure many people who didn't know him well did. But if it ever would have evolved to something more I would have seen through his facade and since I know myself very well I would never have fallen for someone like him so I was never the one that got away. I told him that the only good thing about him in my eyes, the only redeeming quality is that he decided to bring his brother with him that night and even if I was very angry with him now I will always be thankful to him and I will always be grateful that I crossed paths with him because it led me to my husband. And for you not to even call to apologize to your brother for embarrassing him and hurting his feelings says a lot about how much you have planned to hurt him on his day. My husband was silent the whole time. The mood was a bit awkward for a minute after my outburst but then people were normal and some apologized for what happened and we ended up having a good time. When we got home my husband who's been sleeping in the living room almost every night hugged me and kissed me. The first time he kissed me since the I do. I felt my anger building up again and I had another outburst. I told him that we weren't okay and that he never has the right to shut me out and give me the silent treatment for so long ever again if he wanted to stay married to me. He said I know and that he regretted his coldness. We made love for the first time as a married couple, and second, third and fourth, and then I fell asleep in his arms in our bed. After 2 outbursts on 2 brothers in one day I felt content and I slept very well. This morning my husband woke me up with kisses and hugs and he apologized for hurting me and taking out his anger on me. He said the shock was too great for him and he was afraid that I didn't love him and just settled for him because Chris is the charmer and always had it easy to be loved by people. He thought something more happened and he didn't dare to ask me because he wasn't mentally prepared to hear that the love of high life maybe wasn't his. He looked his old cheerful self that I missed so much. I just wanted to cry but I didn't. We discussed therapy and we are planning to start looking for a therapist after our honeymoon but for now I just want to snuggle him and feel his love. He has a lot of making up to me to do. What is the craziest arrest you have ever seen? I was a floor manager of a guitar store in San Diego back in the early 2000s. After hours, I was one of 3 people called if anything happened at the store, break-in, fire, etc. One morning, about 3 a.m., my phone rings and it's our alarm company alerting me to a possible break-in. 2 of the store's motion sensors were activated. So, I get dressed and drive the 11 miles to the store. I arrived right after the first 2 police units showed up. I identified myself to them and gave them our passcode for that day. We changed it daily and it had to match the code given to the police by the alarm company. We went into an adjacent office where I disabled the alarm. The front door to the store was still locked, so I unlocked it and opened the door. By this time, 4 more police units had arrived, one of which was a K9 unit. The cops walked around the store and determined that there was no one there. They then asked me to come into the store to see if I could identify anything which may have been stolen. We had instruments worth several $1,000s, or see anything out of place. By this time, my boss, the general manager, had arrived. He and I walked through the store and, so far as we could tell, there was nothing missing. Just as we were about to attribute it to a false alarm, wouldn't be the first time, but the first time where 2 sensors activate, I looked above the door to the customer bathroom at the cover to an air vent. It was perfectly in place. I tapped my boss on the shoulder and pointed to it. That vent cover was never perfectly in place. It was slightly warped and wouldn't fit into place without a good amount of force. Someone was holding it from behind. My boss motioned for the policeman to an area out of earshot and told them what he and I suspected. They brought in Samba, the K9. The dog and the handler stayed in the store while we made some commotion about it being another damn false alarm. And how we were going to get home and go back to bed and yada yada yada. I made sure I slammed the door hard enough for the thief to hear it. It was a big metal door. I didn't lock it, though. About a minute later we heard screaming. When the thief jumped down from the vent, Samba and his handler were standing about 20 feet away. When the thief started running towards the back door, which was deadbolted, he never would have gotten out. The handler released Samba. Samba made short work of the thief who was arrested and ended up doing 4 years in prison. After the thief's screaming stopped we re-entered the store. As it turned out, the thief entered the store through a very small broken window in the office bathroom. Because the window was broken, the alarm on that window was not active. He somehow managed to climb up into the vent when he saw the flashing lights outside the store. My boss and I had a pretty good laugh over the whole thing and ended up going to breakfast. It was almost 7 a.m. at this point. Before he paid the check he said I could have the day off. With pay. My wife cheated on me but thinks it doesn't count because she did it before we got married. My wife finally came to the realization that I was not going to just get over this, which then brought her to the realization that I might want out of the marriage. This then brought on a near nervous breakdown from her. I thought she was having crocodile tears. But it soon became apparent to me that she wasn't acting or faking. She was having a legitimate panic attack. This led to an ER visit and that led to an overnight stay in the hospital and then to new medications and a scheduled follow-up with her doctor for later next week. This brought her family into it and that in turn led to long conversations all the way around. When we got home I asked what she wanted to do since there was a house full of people and she said she wanted to be with her mom for a while. That was fine with me as I had no desire to hang around all day with her dad or sister, so I said I was going to finish up something at work and would be home later. 2 hours after I get there I get a text from her begging me to please come home and that she really needs me to talk with her. When home, I was greeted on my own front porch by her dad who asks if he can talk to me for a minute. My anger level was already somewhat high, but I was ready to go to war if she had dumped a sack of lies on me with her dad. We sat on our deck chairs and he floored me with his opening salvo. I was expecting to hear anything but what he said. He said that she told them what had happened and that he wanted to apologize to me because he said that he felt like he did a really bad job as a parent and that this mindset that she had was really a creation of her mother's, and that while he loved both of them he said they were wrong, and he had told his wife years ago that telling the girls that whatever happens before marriage doesn't count was a horrible idea and value system to install in them. He then said that he wasn't there to stand up for what his daughter did, but he just wanted me to be aware that what she was saying and how she was acting was simply because she honestly believed that being married was an entirely different life and that they had romanticized marriage to the point that she wasn't understanding real life. We shook hands and he said that no matter what I decided he still thought very highly of me, which honestly made me feel really good for that moment. I then went inside and my wife was curled up in a ball on her mom's lap, and you can tell she has been crying the entire time I've been gone. Mom gets up and comes and hugs me and tells me she is sorry and that she loves me and she is praying that we can work this out. My wife is laid out on the couch at this point. Her mom and dad leave and she sits there looking at me and crying. I went to her and we hugged for a long time with her telling me over and over how sorry she was. After a while, when she calmed down, I asked her what she wanted. She said she wanted to get everything out in the open so I didn't feel like I was being lied to or manipulated. So she wanted me to ask her questions about the affair. First I asked for dates and she remembered exactly when they occurred. Fortunately this happened a little earlier in our relationship than she told me initially, and so we were not engaged when this happened. Second I asked how many times. She decided to go overboard with the explanation and recalled each time they slept in detail. This part of the conversation did not help me at all and in fact almost broke me down. Then came the hard part. Why did she do it? I could not ask this without starting to cry. I asked why wasn't I good enough? It was her turn to hold me because at this point everything came rushing at me. Her telling me having to watch them laugh with each other, her now telling me how many times they did it and where they did it. After a while of crying in her arms I composed myself. I simply told her that the betrayal was horrible, but honestly her response to me when I found out was just as bad if not worse. She agreed with me and she apologized for calling me immature. She said that she honestly believed that it wouldn't matter to me now because we were married. I started to say something about it, but she jumped in and said that after talking with her parents she now sees that this was very wrong of her and that cheating is cheating, but she still feels like that our happiness that we have shared since being married should count for something. I then replied that I kind of felt like that happiness was built on a lie. This led to another breakdown on her part and almost another ER visit. Fortunately we got her calmed down. I let her sleep the rest of the night feeling like emotionally we were both tired, but come Sunday we were talking again. By this time I wasn't as sympathetic as I had been when we got home from the ER. I told her that I thought her introducing him to me was crappy, me having to watch her dance with him was extra crappy, and the fact that she only told me because she was going to get caught was an elite level of crappy. Then I demanded to know why did she think I would find out and how many of the people at the wedding knew besides me. Well, obviously the guy knew, but then his best friend in the world also knew, which then led to her sister finding out and she was afraid her sister was going to be the one to tell me. I asked how often she sees this guy and she said that the wedding is the first time she has seen him in 3 years. Then I lost it and asked her if she slept with him during any of the lead up to the wedding. She got all mad about it, acting like she wouldn't sleep with anyone because she was married. I just lost it again and had to leave for a while because once again I felt like she was living on married planet. I finally got cooled off enough to come home and try to be civil about things. She finally asked me what she could do to help me get past all of this, which may not sound like much, but it was the first time she offered to help me really, so it was at least a nice gesture. I told her I wasn't sure what she could do or if there was anything either of us could do and that I may never get over this. She said that she wanted to help because she didn't want to see me in pain and that over the years she hopes I'll be able to judge her based on who she is now. She would do anything I wanted to work this out. She also wanted to be sure that I knew that she has been 100% faithful since we've been married and would never cheat on her vows. I then asked for a moratorium from further talks till at least Wednesday.